Welcome to this exclusive conversation. Over the past 2 months, I've been having series of informal digital conversations with expert minds to understand India's COVID response. The earlier conversation was with Mr. Mohandas Pai and Nisha Hola, and today I have with me the managing editor of Financial Express and a very sharp financial mind, Mr. Sunil Jain. Thank you so much, Mr. Jain, for joining me in this conversation. It's great
Thank
to have you.
Yeah.
Mr. Jain, we've been hearing a lot of talks, opinions about the government's economic package. The Prime Minister had come and announced that it's a 20 lakh crore package. Then you had a series of press conferences from the Finance Minister. The opposition is criticizing it. It is not directly going into the hands of the people. Now, I want first an initial response from you. Once the noise has settled, how do you look at the response of India vis-a-vis the COVID pandemic economically?
Well, I think there is no doubt that the package is very limited in terms of what it needs to do. But I think we also need to realize. I mean, obviously, everyone would like packages like what has happened in America, where a certain amount of money is being given to people who are working, to companies and things like that. We would all love that. But I think we need to be realistic about where we are coming from. We're talking about a country which already has a debt to GDP ratio of the central and state governments of about 70%. This is going to go up to about 80% this year itself. And frankly, if calendar 21 doesn't turn out to be a good year, it can rise dramatically. Because essentially, we are talking about the government of India borrowing at about 7.5% or so weighted average, including the past borrowings. And we're talking about nominal growth of GDP being negative this year, and we don't know how it's going to pan out in 2021, in calendar 21. So I think that's point number one. Point number two is that you've got to keep in mind the fact that the public sector borrowing requirement, which is basically the center, the states, and the PSUs, they borrow about 9 to 10%, maybe a little bit more. 9 to 10% of GDP is what they borrow today anyway. Now we're talking about because of the collapse in central and state revenues, that's going up by another 3 to 4 percentage points anyway. So we're talking about public sector borrowing requirements of about 15% of GDP. So this is something which normally is going to send interest rates shooting up. So I think people who are saying that the government needed to spend a lot more, they're not looking at this. Secondly, even if you look at the most optimistic numbers, I mean, the optimistic demand that people have, 10 lakh crores was something that Niti Aayog put out there. Now, 10 lakh crores from the budget itself, not the way the government of India has calculated the stimulus. Even if you look at that and you look at the loss which companies are facing, that 10 lakh crores is not going to do it. Frankly, we've got to get accustomed to the fact, or got to get used to the idea that the recovery is going to be very slow. The government of India doesn't have the money, it cannot put enough money into people's hands for people to start spending that much money. It's just not going to happen. So I think that's my initial that's part A of my initial reaction. Part B of my reaction is there. I think the government is very, very guilty. Is that in the last 6 years that this government has been in place, there has been very, very little reform when it comes to actually doing business in the country. So most large investors in India are facing a hostile government. So I mean, I talk about telecom. Telecom is the easiest one. It's available for everyone to see that this is an industry which is being brought to its knees by a hostile government policy, by the fact that you're charging them just too much money. Now, this is something the government should have reduced. It didn't. Similarly, if you look at the oil sector or the mining sector in general, where the finance minister made some changes over the last few days, typically Indian levies are about 50% higher than those abroad. If you look at, we had a story today in our newspaper because the prime minister, the finance minister talked about how 500 mining blocks, including coal, would be put on auction very quickly here. So we did a story saying that let's look at the last 5-6 year track record and see what's happened there. So, about 240 or something mines were cancelled by the Supreme Court. I think 90 or 95 licenses were given, and only 12 of them are working in. So that's the environment in which Indian business is working. You had Walmart bought Flipkart for $16 billion, and after they bought it, the government started implementing its e-tail FDI policy quite differently. So I think there's a lot of genuine problem that industry is facing, and the government has done nothing to change that in the last 6 years. Now, while the prime minister has promised that he's going to fix some of this, over the next little while, we don't know how he's going to be able to do it. I think the real intent or the real issue is if the government can fix the doing business part, a lot of stuff will happen. I'll give you some examples here.
I
You
want to
know,
just interject there and ask you a
yes,
counter question. Well, Mr. Jain, you've been insisting that the government has not done enough on, making a favorable environment for ease of doing business. Now, whenever this argument comes, the Niti Aayog, Mr. Amitabh Kant, says that the India is improving its ease of doing business ranking. So, how do you see that? Number one. Number two, are you then advocating at this point that the reforms that the government has introduced, whether it is in the agriculture sector, whether it is in the mining, trying to open every sector to private players, will still not eat dividends till the time other measures are not taken? And if yes, what are those other measures?
okay, so let's deal with the ease of doing business. I think everybody recognizes in the government and everywhere else that the ease of doing business with the World Bank has essentially is an index which can easily be gamed. So you look at electricity, for example. So if you can apply online for an electricity connection in Delhi and Bombay, and you can get it quickly, then you've done very well on the electricity index. Now, when is the last time that you saw any businessman, big or small, actually rush to invest in a state or not invest in a state because it took, let's say, 6 months or 8 months or 10 months to get an electricity connection? If you ask, uh, Sunil Mittal that how long does it take for you to get an electricity connection somewhere, he will not even know. Every businessman has agents who do these things there. So they are. So I think there are pressing problems in the power sector, but getting a connection to your house is not a pressing problem. So the ease of doing business is actually it's just a sham, and I don't think anybody in even Niti Aayog takes it very seriously. Because if you look at Niti Aayog has also come out with position papers that they've talked about mining and they've talked about various sectors and they've talked about what needs to be done. If Niti Aayog genuinely felt that India had gone up in the ease of doing business, I don't think they'd be putting out those position papers there. Now to come to what you said about what the Prime Minister has done, now there is no doubt that, for example, the changes that have been made in agriculture, for example, are very, very sweeping. So agriculture in India has been completely stifled over the last since 1955, which is when that Essential Commodity Act came. It's been stifled completely. So this is a very big thing here. And here's the issue. So now the Prime Minister has said that we will allow a contract farming law. Now he has said he'll allow a contract farming law, but when will that law come up? Will it come up in the next 1 month? Will it come up in 2 months? Will some state government object to it? He has said that, for example, we will allow interstate movement of goods there. Now, from whatever I've been told, the government is not going to come out with an ordinance on that. It's actually going to wait for Parliament. So a lot of these things, they get announced, but they don't necessarily mean that it's going to happen overnight. I'll tell you, the announcement the finance minister made on airport privatization, for example, if I recall correctly, they were actually part of the 100-day plan that the Ministry of Civil Aviation gave to this government in 2014. So it was given in 2014 and it's been repackaged or repurposed in 2020. So I think we need to welcome the fact that the government is announcing these changes, but we need to be a little cautious in the sense we should actually see it being implemented on the ground. So I think that's India's real problem, that we have not eased the conditions for doing business.
Well, Mr. Jain, I've frankly have been a big reader of your newspaper and other business newspapers, and I've been hearing this argument that government has to do more. My question to you, Mr. Jain, is that my feedback from the ground tells me that the government has announced the 20 lakh crore package, but people are not able to understand what exactly will they get from these 20 lakh crore. Do you believe that communication on the ground vis-a-vis, because the series of announcements were so many, has to be more clear in nature? Number one. Even on the number two, Mr. Jain, at the end of the day, a lot of arguments have been that the demand has to pick up for the economy to revive. Now, Arvind Virmani is of this opinion that you can only have fiscal stimulus or direct demand support when the economy completely opens up. Now, what is your view on this? Because I think this is a very big point of, I would say, a divided opinion between two schools of thoughts.
Well, I think Dr. Virmani is absolutely right, and which is why the government has been a lot more sensitive when it comes to lockdown 4, where they've left things in the hands of states. So they're saying, for example, just to use the example of Delhi, they're saying that there are certain areas in Delhi, let's say some building in Parpatganj or some colony in South Delhi. So they're saying that you classify that colony as a red zone, but the entire Delhi cannot be classified as a red zone. So because so that brings us to what Dr. Virmani is saying. That see, until people start working again, you can never hope to replace that in terms of earnings there. So if you just take the 8 crore migrant workers that the FM talked about, if these migrant workers on an average, let's say earn, let's say 400 rupees a day, that's 12,000 rupees a month, each one of them earned, and you multiply that by 8, that's 96,000 crore rupees. So, if for example there is a lockdown for 1 month, are we saying that nobody is expecting the government to give them 96,000 crore rupees in a month? So, so they can get that 96,000 crore rupees only if there's enough work for them. So there is no doubt about it that the absolutely critical thing for the economy to start reviving, I think it will still take 6 months. It could take a year for it, to actually start reviving properly. But, opening up is very, very critical. The money in the hands of people. Yes. So for example, I actually believe that if the government of India is able to keep tabs on the banks which they own, and they're able to make sure that these MSMEs get that 3 lakh crore loan which they promised, I think that will be a very, very big step forward. Then I think, I personally, in fact, I am of the view that this 20 lakh crore package that we've seen is actually only the beginning here. I can guarantee that within a few months at the outside, there will be another package, because, when you're looking at 20-30% of restaurants shutting down, hotels in problem.
Jain, I want to come to that, Mr. Jain. I want to come to that, and that is where my next question comes to. Well, you basically said on the part of the economy and the migrants, and I want to draw your attention there. And there is your earlier tweet, and I want to read that tweet, which was you've tweeted this 5 days back, where you've said that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, the MSME package is good, but danger of it going bad as there is no collateral, but can't be helped. Not clear NBFC 1 will work. It hasn't so far. Zero reform while giving 90,000 crore to SCBs. Worrying. Narendra Modi's big promise was reform cross early days. So my question to you is, there are twofold questions. Number one is that the government is acting as a guarantee. But on the ground, do you believe that till the time there is close monitoring by the government, the banks and the NBFCs will actually go ahead and deliver to these MSMEs, because they have this threat, because there is so much of liberalization, the money will not come back, number one. Number two, with respect to the migrants, Mr. Jain, now we're looking at opening up, and you have this scenario where all these migrants are going back. And I've been traveling from the past 38 days on the ground and speaking to the migrants. I don't see a point that they'll be returning in the near future. So you are in a dichotomous situation where when you want things to open up, you will not have a scenario of your labor there in the factories. So how do you cope up with this? Won't this further slow the reform or the recovery, to say?
Yeah, absolutely it will. Which is why I said the recovery is going to take a long time. So this view that had the government of India put enough money, the factories would start humming tomorrow, that's not going to happen. Let's look at it logically. Let's say, so we know that Maruti and Tata Motors and all have started production. How many people do you know of today who are going to go and buy a car? They're not certain as to whether they'll have their jobs. If they have their job, they're not certain what kind of salary cuts they're going to take. Nobody's going to buy a house. One of the things that the finance minister announced was a more liberal scheme or extension of an earlier scheme for interest subvention for housing here. I think if people are not going to buy a car, where is the question? There is zero question of anybody wanting to buy a house, whether there's interest subvention or not. So, I think a lot of these, we need to be, I don't think the recovery is going to be quick at all. It's going to be very slow. It's going to be very long drawn. And, to get back to get your question as will banks give it or not? See, it's like this here. if just to use the State Bank of India as an example, if State Bank of India is to give, let's say, a 1 lakh crore loan to MSMEs, so for the next 1 year, they know that there's a moratorium. So let's say till next June, they don't have to, the MSME don't have to repay anything. So there's no question of the loan going bad or anything like that. But by then, long before this, State Bank of India gets to know, it has a sense that will this money come back or not? Will it be declared an NPA? Because the way it is that 1st of June next year it will become an NPA. So
can I just interject you for a second? One second. Mr. Jain, just on this point, I want you to address this also. I want you to address this on this specific point. Are you talking about a scenario like the Mudra loan, where we've been hearing that a lot of Mudra loan was not returned back? Just to point it out here, if it is relevant.
See, what I'm saying is that I don't think a lot of this money a large part of this amount of money will go bad, and that's okay. When these companies are in deep trouble, to expect that they'll be able to repay all their money, they will not. So, but what I'm saying is as simple as this: that if State Bank was to get back, let's say on the 1st of June, we know that 1st of June next year, we know that, let's say, 2 lakh crores is going to go bad. If the bank knows that the government of India, Nirmala Sitharaman, will go and then she'll just draw a check and say, here's 2 lakh crores, there's no problem. Then effectively mean that the government of India has pushed its liability 1 year forward, but the bank is safe, the bank has got the money back. We have seen in the past that when the government of India has to capitalize banks, they take forever to do it.
True.
And they're very eagerly about the way to do it. So any sensible banker will say, okay, the FM has told me that I'm going to guarantee this loan, but will she give me the money back the day I need it? If she doesn't give me the money back the day I need it, then maybe I shouldn't give all this loan. So I think it will be a challenge for the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister to actually make sure that banks give out the money with the government wants to do. That's what I'm saying.
And that is where my worry comes, Mr. Jain. And my question to you is that being traveling on the ground and getting a lot of data, which is my primary job, what I see on the ground is with respect to social welfare, whether it is 500 rupees in the bank of account of the female, or it is the money in the Jan Dhan account, or it is, say, for example, Ujjwala. You see government really scoring well in the villages. But my worry right now is your economy will come back on track when ultimately you have more demand, more supply, where people start moving, spending. Now, with what you are telling me, you are giving me a picture that you cannot expect that to happen in the near-term future. So if you cannot expect that to happen in the near-term future, how do we, as an economy, what more needs to be done is my question. Are you expecting that the government will come out with something more in the coming days?
See, what I'm saying is that it's going to take, let's say, for these migrants are not going to come back. That's what you're saying, and I agree with you here.
Yes.
So now, if, for example, whether it's NREGA, and I think the government will have to increase the allocation for NREGA quite dramatically again.
Absolutely.
So whether it's NREGA or whether it's the crop and stuff like that, if there's enough rural demand that gets generated, so that will give a certain boost to the economy. So I'm not sure the economy is at zero right now, and it will take it may not move from 0 to 60 in 1 month. But if it moves from 0 to 10 and then 10 to 20 over a few months, then that's the way it's going to be. So if rural India picks up, so nobody's going to be buying the top end, Maruti car in rural India. But, there will be demand for two-wheelers and stuff like that. So there will be a certain demand for tractors. There will be a certain demand which will come up. So I'm just saying it's going to take time. It's going to be challenging. The point that you're making, that let's say that somebody starts this factory, if there are no workers, how do you start the factory? So, they will also have to come out with, I think that you will have more labor-intensive solutions also being found, which is also problematic on the level.
Let me rephrase it a bit differently. Mr. Jain, could the government have done something more or something different in the current scenario, or do you believe with the constraints that the government had, the government scored well?
The government scored well if the Prime Minister is able to deliver the reform that he has promised. He promised reform. So he said there's going to be ease of doing business. He said, for example, I'm going to let people get competitive. So, to come to that 90,000 crore rupee, which to DISCOM, which I had talked about, there is very little right now to suggest that the DISCOMs are going to be penalized. So, what I'm trying to say that in India, there are 15 types of problems. Like there's labor laws everybody talks about. But electricity rates in India are much higher than those in neighboring countries. So we've got infrastructure bottlenecks. So we need to fix every one of them. See, the problem is at the end of the day, the government needs to jettison its anti-industry stance. I think that's the problem. Government is asking too many, is always trying to control industry. It's trying to extract the most money out of industry. The tax regime, no matter what the government might say, is very, very unfriendly even now. If you don't fix that, I don't think that you're going to be able to get industry. It doesn't matter what the prime minister says or anybody says. And you
So
see,
you're
the prime
pointing,
minister's statement, newspapers will applaud it. But it takes a long time to see it actually filter on the ground.
let me let me dig into what you're trying to say. So you're trying to still say that the bureaucracy is holding a lot of reforms of the prime minister, and still the bureaucracy needs to deliver those reforms, because you have a fear that the prime minister has delivered it, but the bureaucracy might not be able to take it to the last mile.
No, actually, that's not what I'm saying, because I think it's very easy for all of us, including me. We tend to criticize the bureaucrats immediately. I think the problem really is at the political level. It was the same set of bureaucrats who were there in 1991, where under Mr. Narasimha Rao, you were able to liberalize the economy. It was the same set of bureaucrats who, under Mr. Vajpayee, delivered a fantastic telecom package. So I don't. So it is certainly true that the bureaucracy can be a stumbling block, but the first decision on what to do has to come from the political establishment. And unless that decision is unequivocal, the bureaucracy is not going to allow things to move. The point I'm making is that I'm not seeing that unequivocal signal coming from the government that I want this to be done. If the government says that I'm going to cut telecom levies from 13% right now of turnover to 1%, that's not something a bureaucrat can stop. If the government of India says that I'm going to slash the district mineral fund and the levies on mining are going to come down to Australian levels, that's not something a bureaucrat can stop. If the government of India says that I will allow FDI in retail, in multi-brand retail, that's not a decision which a bureaucrat stops. These are political decisions. So it's become easy for us as journalists to say, "Arey yaar, the bureaucrats don't allow it." The politicians love it because you're blaming the bureaucrats and not them. I think the fundamental problem in India is with the political class. And frankly, there's no point talking about the political class, because when you've got a government which is as powerful as Mr. Modi's, the blame has to lie with him.
Mr. Jain, I have a question, and that question is that don't you think that the strategy of the prime minister right now is to spur up rural demand, and most of his measures, if you've seen the budget, whenever the industry asks for things, his focus has been on the Bharat, not the India, number one. And number two, Mr. Jain, I have a fear that with all these reforms which are coming up, whether it is land reform which is coming up, labor reform coming up, you will have this big threat of labor unions trying to literally, I would use the word not jeopardize, but stall the reforms as they had done the last time. You remember the Soot Boot Ki Sarkar Jai. So right now you have the situation where the prime minister is trying to bring these labor codes. Different states are trying to bring these labor reforms, but there is also a threat that the labor unions might use this or stall this, and again we might come back on the reforms agenda.
See, there's I'm glad you mentioned Soot Boot Ki Sarkar. Now, Soot Boot Ki Sarkar was essentially a jibe which Rahul Gandhi made.
Absolutely.
And an all-powerful prime minister like Narendra Modi chose to get awarded by it. I mean, it is not as though Rahul Gandhi has great following. If the Congress party and Rahul Gandhi had fantastic all India following, the party wouldn't have got the seats it's got. So the party has been marginalized to a large extent, and yet one statement by the head of that party is enough to cripple a powerful Mr. Modi into an action. I think that's really absurd. So a lot of these fears that we have. I mean, I'm not saying that the labor unions are not a strong force to reckon with, but I think a lot of the fears that we have are actually fears in the political class's own mind. I mean, as I said, if you do, if you bring down telecom levies, if you slash mineral levies, if I mean, it's like, for example, a company like Monsanto, which is actually doing good work in the cotton sector. If a company like Monsanto is being hounded by the government, I don't think that's a bureaucratic thing. I don't think there's a union out there or a lobby body which is so strong
But Mr.
that
Jain, I would like to interject you here. You see a scenario even today when you're trying to increase the FDI in defense, you're trying to bring up some private sector participation in space. You liberalize agriculture. The jibe from the opposition is that you care for the private sector, you care for the rich, but you are not caring for the majdoor, you're not caring for the poor. But the reality is that none of the states today have any migrant database. So even if any government wants to support the migrants, you do not have a database which tells you how many migrants are there, say in Delhi, how many migrants are there in Mumbai, or which state has how many migrants. So at the end of the day, the political messaging or the political constraints also remain, Mr. Jain.
no, see, I mean, I agree with you that the states don't have a migrant database, which is why, if, for example, the government wanted to give, for the sake of argument, 5,000 rupees to every migrant laborer, there is no, mechanism. It has to give that thing. I agree with you there. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that, when you talk about political messaging, what I find very odd is that Mr. Modi as a prime minister, he's a very powerful prime minister. He normally gives two hoots for the opposition. He doesn't consult I'm not saying that he should necessarily. The opposition has great ideas all the time, but Mr. Modi, as his general style, is not to consult the opposition. He loses no opportunity to make fun of the opposition. So it's not as though he's so concerned about what the opposition says that when the opposition says "Soot boot ki sarkar," or that you're more concerned about the rich people, that he should let that bother him. That's the point I'm making. I'm saying that if he's very focused on the fact that he needs to get things happening, they will happen. But he needs to be convinced himself. You talked about about ISRO and the space and stuff like that. I know of examples of private companies, for example, Hughes Satellite, has been trying to set up a satellite of its own for the last 10 or 15 years in India. It's not been allowed to, because there is one lobby within ISRO which says that no, only the Indians will do it. No foreign company will do it. So I'm saying they are vested interests like that, and it is up to the Prime Minister of the country to break those vested interests. If he doesn't break those vested interests, we remain exactly where we are. So maybe instead of a 20 lakh crore package, maybe the Prime Minister, if let's say he had actually given 20 lakh crores of cash to people in their pockets.
There's a WhatsApp forward, Mr. Jain. There's a WhatsApp forward which is going on, which says that there's 130 crore is the population of India. Even if you give, say, every individual 1 crore, won't that be better? That's just a WhatsApp forward going on.
I'm just saying that so if Mr. Modi had actually given 20 lakh crores of cash to people, and he doesn't do the stuff that I'm talking about in terms of genuinely liberalizing the economy and genuinely making it a conducive environment for business to invest in, that 20 lakh crores of cash is not going to help. 20 lakh crores looks like a lot of cash to middle class people like you and me. Yeah. But as I said, when you look at it in terms of 145 crore workforce working every day, every month, and how much money they make, and how much what is the flow of money in the economy, 20 lakh crores is not that much. Unless the business environment is improved, nothing can get fixed. That's so just to summarize, I'm saying that frankly, given the constraints that we had, I don't think the Prime Minister could have done much more than he had. Maybe a little bit here and there, but not much more. I'm saying he could have done a lot more when it comes to reforms. He's missed that bus in the last 6 months. It is still not too late for him to do it. Let's not blame the bureaucrats for this. The bureaucrats have a lot of problems, but the real problem or the real solution has to come from the political class. Let's not blame the opposition, because the government really doesn't care too much about the opposition. It's a very strong government. It's very politically powerful. So it shouldn't tie itself up in not saying that the opposition will say this. That's really the message that I'm giving.
And I'm coming to my penultimate question. You don't seem to be a happy man. My question to you is... My question to you is, Mr. Jain, can you enlist me those 3 reforms which will make you a happy man?
No, I said, make doing business in India actually easy. I don't need to just one reform. Make doing business in India easy, and it's all done.
Mr. Jain, 3 concretes on that. 3 concretes on that. Can you just give me 3 concretes on that?
If you begin with on telecom, reduce the telecom levies to 1%. I think reduce mining levies to about half of what they are. Make mining permissions easier. you'll get a real boost to the economy with just these 3-4 things.
Okay. My last question, Mr. Jain. Mr. Jain, I have this big worry that the whole media narrative of COVID has been more about fear. Now, I'll give you an instance. I've been traveling from the past 38 days and I have studied this extremely in depth. And on April 11th, I had predicted that India will have less than 5,200 deaths with the prediction model, and it is coming out to be true. Even John Hopkins did not get it correctly. But I see a big fear in the mind of the common man to everybody I speak to. And because of this, my worry is that even if you take obtained amount of steps and reforms, till the time you do not remove this fear from the mind of the people, those will not reach logical conclusion. Now, India has 1 lakh cases, fine, but India still has just 3,100 deaths. You can't have because we all know that you will not reach a situation of zero COVID death in the near future. You have to learn to adapt and live with COVID and take the necessary precaution. But the fear is so palpable, Mr. Jain, that my worry is that even if you do so many reforms, till the time the fear is not eliminated, you will not see them translating on the ground.
No, I think there are two issues. This is a very valid point that you're making is about the fear that, when you look at the number of cases that we have, the number of fatalities and all, so it is very low. But I think the fear is also at the same time a legitimate fear. If you live in Bombay, for example, you perhaps would know people who tried to get to a hospital when they were unwell and the hospital didn't have enough beds, so they actually died on the streets. Now, there are not too many people. I think there are about 6-7 reported cases like that. But over the next few weeks, those cases will multiply. So, the big difference between, COVID and let's say the TB related deaths or other things like that is all of this is getting collapsed, and not just in India, but the world over. It's getting collapsed within a few weeks or a few months. So, we might find, for example, let's say 1 lakh cases, when you say 1 lakh cases isn't that much, but 1 lakh cases over a period of, 3-4 weeks is a lot, or 6 weeks is a lot. So I think the compression is very, very high. So it is worrying it. But I'll tell you, you give it another few months, and as there's a little bit more hope of a vaccine, or maybe some of the homeopathic trials we're talking about actually start working, or once everybody in major cities and major states are able to make enough quarantine beds and stuff like that, I think the fear element will start going away in another few months. So, I agree with you that the fear is a lot. I don't agree that it's completely unwarranted. But what I'm saying is that the opening up of the economy, I mean, it's not as though people ask that, that the atmosphere for doing business is so fantastic, but it's only the fear of COVID that people don't want to go out and embrace those opportunities. That's not true. So I'm saying that the fear of COVID is keeping us in our houses today. We will not be able to eat out or stuff like that. But if there are great opportunities to be got, we'll do them. To give you an example, in the middle of this, Apple is though it's an American company, but Apple is in the midst or in the middle is trying to ramp up its production in India. So you've got a business opportunity because the government has given them a great amount of incentive for every phone which is exported. So they're seeing a business opportunity, they're going to ramp up. I think when there's opportunity, people will take it. So, the COVID fear will keep us back right now. I think that fear will diminish over the next few months. And it is not the fear which is keeping us from investing. It is the lack of a great investment environment.
Well, Mr. Jain, on that note, I am an optimist and I do hope that the current package which the government has come up with, if it can be implemented on the ground, you will see a substantial change along with the reforms which you are speaking about with respect to reducing the mining levy, with respect to taking care of the power sector. If these can be done and if you can have many states competing with each other to get more investments and ensure that more business-friendly policies are in place and you get the labor thing going, without worrying about the trade union, I think this is a golden moment for India, considering what is happening globally with China. But time will tell, as you say, whether things will work on the ground, whether reforms will actually take place. I think we have to wait and watch on that. It was a fantastic conversation with you, Mr. Jain. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.